Today I'm going to take you through the ripping process of Turbografx-CD games in general. We're going to start with an abnormally large game which I displayed in my previous video, Dracula X Rondo of Blood. And we're going to look at the sizes that we're working with here. We have compressed archive, which is 308 megabytes. Then we have the extracted archive, which is 494 megabytes. Obviously, this is not going to work, so we're going to make this work. We're going to use daemon tools, and we're going to mount that Q file. And I normally like to do a rename and copy the name file, and you'll see why in a minute. Now that I have that name copied, I'm going to mount it. Now that that's mounted, I'm going to open up a command prompt. And I'm using Turbografx, which I've previously used in other videos. And I have to go to the directory it's in. It's in my root directory. And you can see on here where I have it. You want to basically navigate from the C drive ISO rip to Turbografx. And I have to back out here. Change directory back, which would be 2 periods. Change directory back, 2 periods again. Now I have to change directory and go forward. I'll have a space and I'll go to my ISO rip folder, then my turbo rip folder. And then I'm going to execute the program by typing in Turbografx-E. Now I'm going to get a list of CD-ROM drives, and the reason I copied the name of the file is if it doesn't recognize it, which it does for Sega CD, Sega Saturn, PlayStation 1, etc. But this program is specifically made for Turbografx-CD Game, so it's not generally a problem. But I still copy the name, and you'll see why through a few things I do here. But it's mounted to this drive right here, so I'm going to type in 1. Then it's going to rip the ISO and WAV files. And I'm only going to need the ISO because this is going to be the ripped version of it. So I'm going into my test folder, which I showed you the files in. And I'm going to take a copy of this full version here that's extracted. And the program I'm going to use to compress it is going to be CHD Man. And I'll show you how that works too. Set the full version there. And I'm going to take the rip version as well. And that's in my turbo rip folder. And I'm going to show you an error message that you could typically get if you do not use CHD Man properly. I'll show you how to basically deal with it and correct it. So now that we have both of these in the directory, I'm going to back out and go to where my CHD Man is. And I'm going to execute the program, but I'm going to do it with the commands that I need. So I'm in the folder, and this is going to be the error that you're going to see. I'm going to right click, rename, copy this entire file name. This is the RIP version. That's 19.8 megabytes ripped as an ISO right now, but we're going to get it even smaller. So I have to execute CHD Man. With a space, I'm going to do create CD. Double hyphen, input, and I'm going to put the file name. And it has an extension of ISO. I'm going to do a space, double hyphen, and I'm going to do an output, file name again. This is where the copy and paste really comes in handy. That's going to be CHD. Now this is how you typically do it, but it's going to fail, and I'll show you why. The reason that failed is because when you do file names, especially for Q files and just ISOs in general, you always want to have no spaces or have underscores where the spaces are. So I'm just going to basically rename this. I'll just do Dracx for now with an underscore. And I'm going to do the exact same command in CHD Man. So CHD Man I'm going to pull up, create CD, input, and this will basically account for the spaces with underscores now. It's an ISO, output, And this would be the CHD, which is the format you need to run on the PCE fast with my setup, which I'll show you before the end of the video. And I'm going to push enter. Now that's ripping, and we'll see what size we get it at. We got it down to 8.60 megabytes. That's pretty awesome. Now we're going to see what we can get the full version to. That has underscores, so I'm not going to have a problem with file name. So I'm going to copy that name, do the same command, and we're going to let that rip. And I already did this. I'm going to show you what it ended up coming up as. My results were 8.60 megabytes for the RIP version, and the full version I got to 282 megabytes. Now another thing I'm going to show you is this may or may not surprise you, but I've actually been through this whole stuff years ago. 2004, I made a topic when Turbografx-CD emulation was really new, and I pretty much got things going the same way I did on the Mini for you guys, and I did everything I could to help people get along. I mean, things were pretty complicated at the time with Sega Saturn emulation, Turbografx-CD emulation, and a lot of people didn't understand how it worked, but I've been through this, and not only have I been through this already, I literally have already ripped all these games years ago. So I'm going into my rip folder. You see. I've ripped all these games years ago. I've did 7 zips of ISOs. I've done the ISOs by themselves. I've done all the Japanese games. I've done all the US games. So I've been through all these, and I have a couple hundred of them here. And I even did all the Q files for all of these to make it easier to mount them and Damon tools, alcohol soft, etc. So we take it, for instance, the Dracula file here. You see the setup here. I've been through all this stuff years ago. Now we're going to add some games into Hackshi that I've already ripped in the last couple of days for this new format. And I have some I've already done here. And my format is generally I'm doing PCE-CD, the name, the size of the file, then whether or not it's full or ripped. And I have quite a few done, and I'm going to add a couple more real quick just to show you how I add them. And when you add it, sometimes you won't get the file names. It says games and apps. I'm going to change it to all files. And we'll add Cotton Fantastic Night Dream here. And I'm looking at the file size here. 1.58 megabytes. So I'm going to add it. First thing I'm going to do is add that 1.58 megabytes. And deem it a RIP. And I'll change the name like I normally do. I have to change the command line from bin CHD to PCE. Then I'm going to add the artwork. Now that we have that added and the command line's right, I could literally just flash this, and as long as I have the right modules installed, they'll run. So what you're going to need here, and I'm going to show you from what I have now, you're going to need the master BIOS module, And this has basically the PC Engine BIOS that you need to run. Then you'll need PCE Fast, which is the updated version. You see bin here, PCE, that's what you need as your command line. Then of course you need RetroArch. So you need Master BIOS module, PCE Fast, and RetroArch. And then you can flash and run the game, and they run pretty awesome.